This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours. Sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder. If something in this episode resonates with you or you want to reach out directly, you can email the show at yprpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find the podcast on Facebook. Just search You're Probably Right podcast and the page should come up. And if you are listening somewhere other than Spotify, you can find the show there as well. Just search You're Probably Right and follow the podcast so new episodes show up automatically. All right, let's get into it.
How you doing, y'all? This is MCM, and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Oh, man. You know, things have been looking up lately, and sometimes, it's hard to see it when you're in it. And I believe that I'm speaking to now my rightful audience, my rightful friends. Even audience, forget about audience. Like, it's not like I'm on a stage somewhere. Um, we're just considering together. It just happens to be that I'm the person who's talking. Remember, these aren't lectures. These aren't teachings. It's just me just telling you what I think and what I know and what I've experienced and what I've learned and whatever it is. Um, so hopefully you've been enjoying these. It's really great to see who my audience is. Not that I know your names, you know what I mean? Unless you've emailed me at yprpodcast@gmail.com. Um, just because of the metrics. I mean, I guess people can lie, right? They could say I'm a woman on their whatever on their usage. I don't know how they check to see really what you are. But the good thing, what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to get at, is that my listeners are like 51 and 43 or something. They're not exact because they have like this set of 8% of people who have not disclosed whether they're a male or a female. But I just like the fact that male female numbers are even, and that means that I'm speaking to a wider audience. Maybe I'm not speaking to the depths of the male side of things or the female side of things, and the fact that I am a male. Um, it's just cool. You know what I mean? I could be sitting in here being bitter about my experiences, and I could be sitting there just, as they say, trolling and trying to make everybody believe in the way I think things should be and all that kind of baloney. I'm just a guy talking, you know what I mean? And as I said, we're just hanging out. Maybe you're walking the dog. Maybe you're lying down, you're about to get some sleep. Maybe you're moving around the house getting ready for work, or maybe you're driving to work or from work, or maybe you have some tedious task that you need to do for work and it doesn't take much talking and a lot of physical labor even, and you just want somebody, saying something to you. Well, I'm cool to be that guy, and I am MCM, and this is episode 316 of You're Probably Right podcast, and I'm proud to say that that number is actually 316. Actually, there's more. I think when you go to some websites, some, what do you call it? Not websites, platforms, whatever. When you go to some platforms, it says I have 323 or something like that. And it's probably because there was a few that I've erased. I have some crappy ones early on that I've just kept. And maybe I just keep it for posterity or whatever it is, history. Um, but I've gotten better. Now my scripts and the stuff that I'm going to talk about sometimes is not always amazing for everyone or for the masses. I'm sure it speaks to someone, and I'm pretty sure this one will speak to those that are it is intended. Somebody asked me today. Well, they asked me yesterday. They said, "What did he say?" Oh, I think it was something like along the lines of, "What is your worst, like, what have you done, and what do you think about, like, getting more popularity or blah blah blah, whatever it is. But I was there saying that, at this point, it's been years. I've been on this journey, and there's a few things that could help me. I'm not gonna say go viral, but like, there's actually video. I could be doing promo, for the amount of time that I've put in. Like, some people, obviously I'm not a star, so, but some people, they promo starts right off the get go. You know what I mean? They throw a bunch of money into it and they're able to do that and they get to where they're getting. But, I made it a point to say that my podcast is like old school podcast. You know what I mean? Probably when it started. I believe there will be a return to it for more than one reason. Um, because I think I like the idea that somebody can listen to my podcast and not have to do anything, or they can do everything while they're listening to this podcast. In other words, you could be digging a ditch and listening to this podcast. You could be weightlifting and listening to this podcast. You could do cardio and listen to this podcast. You could swim, well, depending on your what do you call it? The earplugs or air, whatever. The you know what I mean, the earphones, whatever it is that you got on, or you could do a lot of things, you know. And I don't sit there and just take up your hour or so, whatever it is that the episode is. You're able to still function in society. You're still around. You're still able to be around other people. You're still able to physically do things. You know what I mean? Hopefully, I spend all that time explaining something that probably could have been explained a lot quicker. And again, that's just another aspect of this podcast.
If this sounds familiar, follow the show so this kind of thinking stays close.
So that was basically perfect timing. Okay, so this is episode 316. Remember, all my episodes are for entertainment purposes only. And I think I got a good one. I think I got a good one. The title of it is the superhero complex. Why we chase supermen, and this could be superwomen. So guys, you could still hang out here. It's not like it's just for women. It's just, why do we chase the superhero, really? So it could be, superwoman, superman, whatever. But in this case, I'm looking at it, and you'll see the different types of the same guy and different types of different guys. And I think you might get this. Hopefully you get this, my thought process behind this. Okay, so why we chase Superman, overlook Clark Kent, and often end up with Lex Luthor. All right. There's an old story most of us grew up watching without really thinking too deeply about it. Superman. From the first Reeve that played the character. Google it, you'll know what I mean. Weird. Most of us watched it as kids. Some people watched the movie as adults. Some people watched the cartoons. Some people have watched the television shows. It's been retold so many times that it almost feels like it's like part of our background noise in our culture somewhere. Everybody knows the story, and somehow everybody can relate in some respect, I think, even if they haven't sat down and watched a single full episode. You've got this man who can fly through the sky. He can lift mountains. He can stop bullets. He can save entire cities when things are falling apart. He can hear cries for help from miles away, and he can show up in seconds. In every version of the story, Superman is powerful. He's impressive. He's the kind of figure that makes people feel safe with just him being around. If something goes wrong, Superman can fix it. If danger shows up, Superman can stop it. If someone needs help, Superman is the one who arrives. He's larger than life. But then the story gives us something else that's just as important. Clark Kent. Now, Clark Kent is the same man. We know that as the audience, but Clark Kent looks like a completely different person. Clark is awkward. Clark is Clark sometimes trips over things. Clark second guesses himself. Clark isn't always the most confident guy in the room. In some versions of the story, he's quiet. In some versions, he's a little bit clumsy. In some versions, people overlook him completely because he just blends into the background. There's nothing special about him. Clark Kent is the man who walks into work carrying a stack of papers and almost drops them. Clark Kent is the man who doesn't always have the right words to say. Clark Kent is the man who doesn't dominate every room he walks into. And in many ways, Clark represents something very ordinary. He represents a human being. Now, the interesting thing about the Superman story isn't actually the flying or the strength or the saving the world. Those are the flashy parts. Those are the things that make the movie exciting. The interesting part is the question that sits underneath the whole story. And it's the question most people never stop to ask. Who does Lois Lane actually fall in love with? Think about that for a sec. Because on one hand, you've got Superman, a man who can literally fly her anywhere in the world without even having any luggage. And she could come back and change in 5 minutes if they want to. A man who can protect her from danger. A man who can rescue her from almost any situation imaginable. Superman is exciting. Superman is impressive. Superman is powerful, but Superman isn't the one sitting across from her every day. Clark Kent is. Clark Kent is the one who shows up at work. Clark Kent is the one who talks to her during ordinary moments. Clark Kent is the one who exists in the slow, the quiet parts of life, where nothing dramatic is happening. And that's the contrast between those two versions of the same man. It raises a very interesting question about how human relationships actually work. Because Superman can save your life, but Clark Kent is the one who lives beside you. Superman shows up when everything is falling apart. Clark Kent shows up when nothing special is happening at all. And those are two different roles, very different. One is dramatic, the other one is steady. One feels exciting, the other one feels dependable. And when you start thinking about relationships in the real world, you begin to realize that many of us are chasing something that looks a lot like Superman or Superwoman. We want someone impressive. We want someone exceptional. We want someone who can do everything, solve everything, protect everything, fix everything. We want someone who feels larger than life. But life itself isn't built on dramatic moments. Life is mostly built on ordinary days. It's built on waking up in the morning. It's built on going to work, coming home. It's built on talking about things that didn't go right, trying to solve problems that don't have quick answers, helping each other through stress, helping each other through disappointment, each other through the thousands of types of frustrations that show up in everyday life. When you start thinking about it that way, the Superman story begins to look less like a fantasy and more like a mirror. Because a lot of people are out here looking for Superman, but when they actually need to build a life with someone, it's Clark Kent. And the tension between those two ideas is something I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. Why do people overlook the person who is consistent? The person who shows up for them regularly? Why do people sometimes chase the person who seems extraordinary while ignoring the person who is quietly dependable? Why do we sometimes fail to recognize the value of someone who is right there beside us every day? Sure, talking to the person across the city or across the world is cool. It's exciting, risky, whatever. And maybe the most important question of all is, why do we sometimes only realize what someone meant to us after they stop showing up? That pattern happens more often than people would like to admit, I think. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've come to believe that there's something deeper going on underneath all of that. Something I've started to think about, as the superhero complex. I don't even know if it's something that anybody else has ever talked about. And what I want to talk about today is what that actually means, why people fall into it, why it causes so many relationships to break down, and why the person who seems ordinary at first glance might actually be the most valuable person you could ever choose to build a life with. Because sometimes the person who doesn't look like Superman or Superwoman at all is the one who ends up being there when everything else and everyone else disappears. And when you start to think about relationships in the real world, something else becomes obvious. Is it obvious? A lot of people spend their time chasing heroes, superheroes, superwomen, supermen. They want the impressive person. But who are you trying to impress? The powerful person, the one who seems exceptional in every way. At the same time, they overlook Clark Kent, plain Jane. The person who quietly shows up, the one who might not look extraordinary at first glance, but is steady, dependable, and present. But here's where the story even gets a little bit more interesting. Because in real life, when people chase Superman and ignore Clark Kent, they often end up, they often don't ever end up with Superman at all. They end up with Lex Luthor. Not someone who protects them, not someone who quietly builds a life with them, but someone who knows exactly how to look impressive while serving only himself. Maybe it's a Catwoman, I don't know. And that pattern happens far more often than people would like to say. So today I want to talk about something I've been thinking about, as I said, for a while. Something I'm going to call the Superman or the superhero or the superwoman complex. Why we chase the extraordinary, why we overlook the dependable, and why sometimes in the process we accidentally invite the wrong kind of person into our lives. So let's talk about this idea, what I'm calling the superhero complex. Superhero complex is something that shows up in relationships more often than people are willing to say. It's the tendency we have to sometimes cautiously and sometimes without it, realizing it or whatever, to to look for someone who seems like they can solve everything. Not just a partner, not just someone to walk through life with, but someone impressive, someone powerful, someone exceptional, someone who seems like they've got it all figured out, someone who checks every box. You know, the type of person I'm talking about. They've got a career, maybe they own a business. They've got confidence, they've got presence when they walk in a room. They seem capable of handling anything that comes their way or your way. And when when we see someone like that, it creates a certain feeling. It feels like safety. It feels like opportunity. It feels like maybe life will be bigger if we attach ourselves to someone who operates at that level. It feels like we've found something rare. In many ways, we're drawn to that kind of person for understandable reasons. Human beings admire strength, we admire competence, we admire people who seem to have the ability to handle life with ease, no stress. But the problem starts when we begin expecting one person to carry every role at the same time. We want them to be impressive. We want them emotionally strong. We want them to be financially stable with good credit. We want them to be exciting. We want them to be wise. We want them to be fit. We want them to be perfect. We want them to be protective. We want them to be confident. And somewhere along the way, what we really are looking for is someone to stop being a human being and start looking more like a superhero. Or at least that's what it seems like. We really stopped, you know, because it's not realistic. Someone who can solve everything, someone who can protect us from everything, someone who can carry the weight of life so that we don't have to feel pressure ourselves. Or at least not the pressure that's uncomfortable for us. But real life doesn't work like a comic book. Real life doesn't operate on dramatic rescue scenes and perfect timing. The person who can fly you around the world is not always the person who knows how to sit in a quiet space beside just you when life falls apart. And those two kinds of strengths, that including the person who can lift mountains, is not always the person who understands how to carry emotional weight. And those kinds of strengths are very different. One looks impressive from the outside. The other one only becomes visible when things get difficult. That's something a lot of people don't learn until much later in life. Because when everything is going well, when things are exciting and new and full of possibility, it is easy to be impressed by someone's achievements, outer outer things, physical things even. Superficial, I meant. It's easy to admire someone's success, someone's business, somebody's bank account, somebody's credit limit, somebody's credit rating, someone's house, someone's car, someone's clothes and jewelry. It's easy to be attracted to someone confident.
Hit subscribe to You're Probably Right. Real life, real consequences, and real conversations that don't hide behind safe answers.
Yeah. It's easy to be attracted to someone's confidence or their presence or the way other people look at them. But relationships are built during the easy parts. They're not built by the easy parts. They're built during the ordinary parts. They're built during the quiet evenings when it's just you two. They're built during stressful times when it's, again, just you two. They're built during moments when someone is tired, frustrated, worried, uncertain, scared, sad. And that's when something interesting begins to show itself. Sometimes the person who seems extraordinary at everything is actually very difficult. Somebody who seems extraordinary, at everything is actually very difficult to build a life with. Not because they're a bad person, but because being extraordinary in many areas of life often comes with costs. Their time is limited. Their attention is divided. Their responsibilities are enormous. Their focus is constantly pulled into different directions. They don't got all that time. And suddenly the relationship isn't the center of their world anymore. It's something that has to compete. It's something that has to compete with just everything else going on. Career, pressure, expectation, money, the gym, looks, the image they're trying to maintain. And over time, the relationship begins to feel like it exists on the edge of their life rather than at the center of it. Now, on the other side of the equation, it's someone who might not look extraordinary at all. Someone who doesn't dominate the room. Someone who doesn't impress everyone immediately. Someone who might seem a little more ordinary at first glance, but ordinary people often have something that's incredible. Something that is incredibly valuable in a relationship. They have space. They have time. They have presence. They have the ability to show up in a consistent way without needing the spotlight on them. They have time to actually be there. And that matters more than people realize. Because relationships aren't built on dramatic moments, they're built on repeated presence. They're built on someone being there again and again and again, even when nothing special is happening at all. And the interesting thing is that people often overlook that kind of strength. They often look past that person who is quietly dependable. They often look past the person who shows up without needing applause. They often overlook the person who doesn't look like Superman, but who behaves like Clark Kent. Someone steady, someone present, someone consistent. And what I've noticed over time is that people sometimes spend years chasing the person who seems exceptional while slowly ignoring the person who is actually dependable, capable, something stable with them. And someone who's able to build something stable with you. And that's a superhero complex. It's the belief that greatness is always more valuable than steadiness. It's the belief that impressive qualities automatically translate into good partners. Hold on a second, guys. Isn't it funny when your phone is on, you have no clue it's on? I'm gonna pull this back a little bit. You might have to turn up your speakers, your headphones or whatever. I realize this thing's picking up too much sounds around the way the volume is. So I'm gonna do my best to keep speaking up. But yeah, I think I gotta change something there. Sorry about that. If it messes with your levels too much. It's just, the belief that greatness is always more valuable than steadiness. It's the belief that impressive qualities automatically translate into good partnership. And sometimes that belief leads people down a path where they keep chasing Superman while quietly walking past Clark Kent every single day. Maybe I turned it down too much. Next, why we chase exceptional people. Now, once you start thinking about the superhero complex, another question naturally comes up. Why do we do this in the first place? Why are people drawn to the exceptional person? Why do we chase Superman or Superwoman? Because this isn't just random behavior, it's actually very human. Human beings are wired to notice excellence. We pay attention to the things that stand out. Happens all the time. Ask any guy who walking down the street with his girlfriend and a prettier girl walks by. Oh, you get tight. Some of you guys are really good at not looking because you don't want to get cuffed in the back of your head or slapped in the face. But some of you guys already see it before you're caught, before she notices that you saw. You keep your head straight in front of you. But we know confidence, it stands out. By the way, girls do it too. Status stands out. Achievement stands out. Beauty stands out. Charisma stands out. These are the qualities that catch our attention almost instantly, effortlessly. You can walk into a room full of people, and within a few seconds, most people can tell you who seems confident, who seems successful, who's... Wait a second. All right, forget it. Who seems like they carry some kind of influence? There's a natural radar we have for that sort of thing. And when we see those qualities, they create a certain feeling. It just automatically happens. There's no work involved. They signal power. And power, whether we admit it or not, feels safe. It feels like stability. It feels like protection. It feels like someone who can handle problems when life gets complicated. Oh, officer, do you really have to give my husband a ticket? When someone appears competent, it makes people feel like they're attached to something strong. And there's another layer to it as well. Power doesn't just feel safe, it feels exciting. When someone is exceptional in some area of life, it creates this sense that life might get bigger around them. Maybe they have opportunities you don't have. Maybe they have access to things that you've never seen. Maybe they're maybe they're moving through the world at a level that feels elevated compared to the average person. Maybe they're just on another level. And that feel can be very attractive and alluring, right? It creates this idea that if you connect yourself to someone like that, life might move upward, not just emotionally, but socially, financially, professionally, or even just in terms of experiences. So people chase the Superman. They chase the person who seems like they can take them somewhere bigger. They chase the person who appears to have momentum. They chase the person who seems exceptional to everybody else. And again, there's nothing strange about that. Human beings have always been drawn to people who appear capable and powerful. But what most people don't talk about is the hidden cost of dating someone who lives in that world. Because the more exceptional someone becomes, the more life gives them and offers them opportunities like you and better. The more life tends to fill up. Think of it like seconds. Think of it like seconds. If someone is extremely successful in their career, what does that usually mean? It means usually, if they're really successful, their time's limited. It means their attention is constantly pulled in different directions, as I said before. It means they have responsibilities that follow them everywhere. They can never usually turn their phone off. Their phone has to ring. It always rings. Their schedule is always full. Their mind is always working on the next problem they need to solve, and they may not be giving you, they're not giving you their full attention in most cases. And what happens over time is their life becomes very crowded, and not just crowded at work, but crowded with expectations. People depend on them. People want things from them. People expect things, expect performances sometimes. Deliver. You gotta deliver. You gotta solve problems. You gotta make decisions. And that kind of life doesn't leave a lot of empty space. Just think about all the people who are with athletes and entertainers and people who run big companies. How much time do you really think those people have for their spouse? Now, relationships require space. They require time. They require emotional attention. They require the ability to slow down and focus on another person. And when something or someone's life becomes filled with constant pressure and responsibility, those quiet spaces become harder and harder to find. So even though someone may look exceptional from the outside, even though they may look like they have everything together, the reality is that their availability often shrinks. Their time becomes limited. Their attention divides, their responsibilities multiply. And slowly, without anyone really noticing it at first, the relationship begins to compete with everything else in their life. It competes with their career. It competes with their ambition. It competes with the pressure they're carrying. It competes with expectations placed on them by other people. And sometimes the relationship slowly slides down the list of priorities, not because the person doesn't care, but because their life has become so full that something has to give. And it's you because you're reasonable. At least so you thought. Now, this doesn't mean exceptional people can't be good partners. So that's not where this is going. Of course they can. But does it mean that being impressive in the world and being available in a relationship are two different things? Sorry, I think I said that wrong. But it does mean that being impressive in the world and being available in the relationship are two different things. I think I said it. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that until they've experienced the
Subscribe to You're
first.
Probably Right. It's not advice from a pedestal. It's thinking out loud.
Yes, it
No
is.
15-second fixes.
Nope.
No model image
Nope.
telling you how to live. Just real conversation.
Okay, that one caught me off guard. Listen, a lot of people don't realize that until they've experienced it firsthand. Because on the surface, it seems like dating someone exceptional would solve all your problems, but sometimes it creates different sets of challenges entirely. Challenges that don't show themselves until real life begins to settle in, until the excitement fades. Oh, it fades? Yeah. Until the everyday responsibilities of life start showing up. Until you start realizing that their character isn't as beautiful as their body or their face. And that's when the question begins to change. It stops being about how impressive someone is. As a matter of fact, if they're impressive in those two ways that I said, and they have a horrible attitude and behavior and selfish, it actually makes them more unattractive, just because you realize that, and as most people do, that things tend to become easier for people who are that way. People who are fit and trim, people who are beautiful, as people would say, as to the eyes, like too many eyes. They get opportunities, right? The store will stay open a little bit longer for them. The police officer will have a discussion longer with them. They will get a promotion a lot easier. There's a lot of different perks. But when those people behaviors and attitudes aren't as beautiful as their bodies and their face, I'm just saying that just from that little point of view, it changes everything. And it starts to change. It starts to become be how present they are, you know? It stops being about that impressiveness. Because the person who looks like Superman or Superwoman in the beginning is not always the person who is able to consistently show up when life is just ordinary. And relationships spend far more time in the ordinary than they do in the heroic moments. Now, the Clark Kent effect. Now, this is where the conversation turns a little bit. Because once we walk and talk about how people chase the Superman, we also have to talk about the person who stands quietly on the other side of the equation. Clark Kent. Clark Kent doesn't look impressive at first. He's not flashy. He's not dominating the room when he walks in. He's not constantly performing greatness. He doesn't create the immediate reactions where people turn their heads and say, "Ooh, look at that guy. Who's that girl?" La 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 la. Clark Kent is easy to overlook. And in real life, a lot of Clark Kents get overlooked every single day because the kind of strength that they bring into the relationship doesn't show up in a dramatic way. It shows up quietly. Clark Kent shows up. That's the main thing. He shows up when there's nothing exciting happening. He shows up when the day is being long. He shows up when you need a bath. He shows up when you need a meal cooked. He shows up when the grass needs to be cut. He shows up when the kids need to be put to bed or talked to, or when the kids need help with their homework, or when the kids just want to throw a ball around. They show up when, they want to learn, somebody wants to learn how to plant flowers. It shows up when somebody wants to do some woodworking art. It shows up when someone needs a dressed hem for a graduation. It shows up when someone needs a tie tied. They show up when the toilet is clogged. They show up when you need a back rub. They show up when you need a shoulder to cry on. And that kind of presence matters more than people realize. But here's the uncomfortable part of that conversation. The people who are always there for you are often the ones you most likely lose. Not because they're weak and not because they don't care, but because human beings have a strange habit when it comes to consistency. We start taking it for granted. If someone answers your call without hesitation, you slowly begin to assume they'll always answer your call. If someone replies to your messages even when they're tired or when they're even sleeping, they wake up and answer your call or your text, you begin to expect that level every single time. If someone shows up for you even when it's inconvenient, you stop noticing how much effort it actually takes. At first you appreciate it. Wow. At first it feels meaningful. But over time, something subtle happens in the human mind. Consistency becomes normal. And once something becomes normal, even if it's an amazing thing, it stops standing out. The effort becomes invisible, kind of like LeBron James. But the truth is, people who show up consistently aren't doing it because they have nothing else going on. They're not answering the phone because their life is empty. They're not replying to your messages because they're bored. They're making time because they don't have other priorities. They're doing it because you matter to them. That's the real reason. They're choosing to move things around in their lives so that they can make space for you. They're choosing to answer when they're tired because they could be sleeping. They're choosing to listen when they could be doing something else. They're choosing to show up when it would honestly be easier just to stay where they are and not help you fix the broken light at your house. And they choose you. And that choice is in the form of love that often goes unnoticed. Not dramatic love, not movie love, but steady love. The kind of love that builds relationships slowly over time. Now here's where people make a huge mistake. When someone is always available, we begin assuming they always will be. We stop thinking about the efforts behind it. We stop noticing the sacrifice behind it. We stop recognizing the fact that the person is actively choosing us again and again and again and again. Instead, it starts to feel automatic, like something that just happens and everybody does it. Like something that will always be there. And when that assumption actually settles in, appreciation begins to fade. Not all at once, but slowly and gradually. You start to take longer to reply. You cancel plans a little more easily. You assume you can call later or whenever, when you have time again. Maybe you think you found something else, something new, something better, something blue. Boo-hoo. You assume you can make time another day, another way, because somewhere in the back of your mind you believe the person will still be there. Clark Kent will still answer the phone. Clark Kent will still show up. Clark Kent will still make space. But people who give that kind of steady presence are not machines. They're humans. They have feelings too. And even the most patient, consistent person eventually reaches a breaking point where they stop noticing, or they start noticing, I should say. Start noticing something. They start noticing when their effort isn't being met with the same level of care. They start noticing when their presence is expected and not valued. They start noticing what value you place on them and others in past or other people who are around. And that realization doesn't usually happen in a dramatic moment, really. It builds quietly, the same way their love did. And that's when something changes. Because people who care deeply can tolerate a lot, you're right. But one can tolerate feeling invisible, and one can't. No one can really tolerate being invisible forever. When someone finally reaches that point, the change can feel sudden to the other person, but in reality, it's been building for a long time and you just never stopped it, like a snowball. Eventually, it's going to get too big. All those pent-up feelings, all the disrespect. The person who always answers the phone eventually stops answering. The person who always made time eventually stops making time. The person, since you've known them, who always gives and gives and gives, just doesn't have anything else to give. The person who always showed up eventually stops showing up. And when that happens, it can feel confusing to the person who took the presence and their presence for granted. Because suddenly something that felt permanent disappears. Suddenly, the quiet consistency that always was there is gone. And only then do people begin to realize something important. Clark Kent wasn't ordinary at all. Clark Kent was rarer than a, right? You see, there's something called the familiarity blind spot. Now that brings us to something that people don't obviously pay attention to in most cases. Something very quiet, something that doesn't look dangerous at first, but over time it slowly changes. It changes how people treat each other. It's called the familiarity blind spot, like I just said. And it starts with something good, consistency. When someone is consistent in your life, it creates comfort. You know where they stand, you know where they'll be, you know how they'll behave, you know when to call, when you can call, you know if you call, they'll answer. You know that when you need them, they'll probably be there. That kind of reliability, feels safe. It feels steady. It makes life easier. But here's the strange thing about that comfort. Comfort slowly creates blindness, not intentionally, not maliciously. It just happens over time because when something becomes predictable, our minds stop noticing it in the same way. It's kind of funny how that is. It's kind of like when we used to hear those groundbreaking TikToks and those groundbreaking shorts, or Instagram videos or X or whatever. And you're hard pressed. You could find someone who has every mindset, I guess. You could find something a little short on everything and fix everything and all of your problems all at once in 13 seconds. But yet after the video, you still had problems. They'd always preach something, but nothing behind it. And then eventually those types of videos became very, very popular, and a lot of people are doing them. But yet they're all around. You'll see them. They'll have K's behind the number, if not millions, if not M's behind their views. And yet the same amount of people's lives are unchanged. They're just the thing that's predictable as well, I'm trying to show. Even that is predictable. But going back to regular. You see, when something becomes predictable, our minds stop noticing it in the same way. It's just that simple. They think about it as, or if you will, think about it in simple terms. The first time someone does something thoughtful for you, right? You notice it immediately. You appreciate it. You might even talk about it later. Bring it up somewhere. But if the same person does the same thoughtful things again and again and again, something changes. The act itself doesn't change. Possibly the effort it took doesn't change either. But your awareness of it changes. It becomes normal. Yeah, you can always hit that high note. So what? First time you heard it, there was something though. It becomes normal. And when something becomes normal, it fades in the background. Because it is what it is at that point. It is something, but it is what it is. And that's how the familiarity blind spot begins. When someone always answers your calls, you slowly start calling back. You slowly start answering the texts quickly. You slowly start calling less carefully. You don't think about whether it's a good time. You don't think about whether they might be busy. You just assume they'll answer. When someone always shows up, sorry guys, you begin assuming they always will. You stop noticing the effort it takes to make things happen. You stop recognizing the fact that they might be rearranging their schedule or sacrificing something that they need for themselves even, in order to be there for you, in order to do that for you. And when someone consistently makes time for you, I don't know, someone is like that, it's a wonderful thing, but for some reason, something quietly happens. You just start taking your time. You cancel plans a little more easily. You reply messages, but later, sorry, I fell asleep. You assume you can always reconnect tomorrow. Because in the back of your mind, you believe the person will still be there. Now, it's important to say something here. Most of the time, people don't do this out of cruelty. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They're not intentionally taking advantage of the other person. What they're really doing is operating on assumptions. They assume the relationship is stable. They assume the other person understands. They assume the connection is strong enough to absorb small acts of neglect, of course. But assumptions can slowly erode appreciation. And appreciation is one of the things that keep relationships healthy, because appreciation is what reminds people that their efforts matter. It's what reminds them that their presence is valued. Without appreciation, effort becomes or begins to be invisible. Weird, right? Imagine doing something kind for someone every day, again and again, and eventually they stop acknowledging it. It's just part of their life. You know what I mean? Maybe he was the first one ever to pull a chair out for you when you were going to sit down at the table. Or maybe he also pulls it out. He stands up when you approach the table, comes over to your side, pulls the chair out, seats you, and then goes back to his seat. But then he does that every day, and every time you go out, he opens the car door every single time. He pushes the door in front of you and lets you go forward first. Maybe he always steps in front of you on the staircase just in case you slip, you have somebody to hang on to. Maybe he walks on the outside of the sidewalk just in case a car veers onto the sidewalk, he'll get hit first. Imagine someone who does something kind for you every day. Eventually, it stops being really special. It still stays cute. You still appreciate it, but slowly you stop noticing because it's just a part of your regular everyday life. And it's not because you're ungrateful, but because you've just grown to get used to it. It's just something that happens. At first, you might not think about it that much. But over time, something inside of you begins to notice. You begin to feel, I guess you just begin to feel less seen if it happens to you. You feel less valued, less recognized. And that feeling doesn't usually explode all at once. It takes a long time. It builds up quietly. Little disappointment here, a little frustration there. A moment where you realize your effort is expected rather than appreciated. And when that pattern repeats itself long enough, people begin to pull back. Not loudly, dramatically, or just gradually. They give a little less. What the heck? They invest a little less. They show up a little less often. They call a little less often. They text, but they slowed up. Now you have to text first. And the person on the other side of the relationship may not even notice at first because they've grown used to their presence being there. They've grown used to consistency because consistency is never automatic. It's a choice. And when someone chooses or someone's choices begin to feel unrecognized or taken for granted, those choices eventually change. That's the danger of the familiarity blind spot. It turns something valuable into something invisible. And by the time people realize what they've stopped appreciating, it's often slipped away and it is invisible because they're gone. Quiet love versus loud love. And that's another different thing people don't always notice until they've lived through enough relationships to see the pattern clearly. Yeah. And that's a contrast between loud love and quiet love. Most of us are raised on loud love. Movies, movie shows, the movies show it to us, TV shows show it to us, music talks about it, stories celebrate it. Loud love is dramatic, it's exciting, it's full of big gestures and emotional moments. Loud love looks like someone flying across the country to surprise you. It looks like someone who has tickets to the Bahamas, or a special bag or a pair of shoes or a watch or a chain that you like, or an outfit. You know my size? It looks a lot like someone making a grand declaration in front of a crowd. It looks like dramatic apologies, expensive gifts, big emotional speeches, passionate moments that feel intense and uncomfortable and unforgettable. The kind of love that creates adrenaline, it creates excitement, it creates stories, make people talk. And because it's so visible, people tend to assume that loud love must be the deepest kind of love. But real relationships don't actually survive on loud love. They survive on quiet love. Quiet love doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't show up with fireworks. It shows up in smaller ways that are easy to overlook if you're not paying attention. Quiet love is answering the phone when someone calls because you know they need to talk. Quiet love is sending a message just to check in and see how someone's day is going. Quiet love is remembering the small things someone told you a week ago or weeks ago or months ago and bringing them up later because you were actually listening. Quiet love is showing up when someone is having a difficult day, or when they're in pain or they're sick. Even if there's nothing exciting about being there for them. Quiet love is standing beside someone during an ordinary life. Not just the exciting days, not just the big moments, but the boring days. The routine days, the days where nothing special happens at all. Those are the days where relationships are actually built, because most of life is made up of ordinary days. Most of life is not dramatic. It works. And it takes work. It's responsibilities, it's stress, it's exhaustion, it's solving problems. It's making you feel better when you feel bad. It's learning how to live beside another person when both of you are carrying weight of everyday life. And that's where quiet love matters the most. Now, the interesting thing about quiet love is that it rarely gets applause. No one throws a party because someone's answering the phone. No one celebrates the fact that someone consistently checks in. No one's throwing a parade for that person. No one gives awards for showing up again and again and again in an ordinary moment, in an ordinary way. Because those things don't look impressive from the outside, but consistency is effort. And the effort takes something from the person who's giving it. It takes their time. It takes their attention. It takes their energy, emotional presence in some cases. Every time someone answers the phone when they're tired, that's effort. Every time someone rearranges their schedule to spend time with you, that's effort. Every time someone listens to your problems and tries to help you solve them or get you to that answer when they have their own problems and things to figure out, that's effort. And people who give that kind of love are quietly making a choice. They're choosing to invest their time and their attention into someone else. They're choosing to prioritize their relationship. They're choosing to be present. And here's the difficult part. Because quiet love doesn't look dramatic, people often don't recognize its value while it's still happening. They notice loud love immediately. They feel the excitement of big gestures, not small ones. They feel the emotional rush of dramatic moments. But quiet love blends into the background. It becomes part of the normal rhythm of life. And when something becomes part of the rhythm of life, people sometimes stop noticing it. They stop recognizing the effort behind it. They stop appreciating the consistency. They stop realizing how rare it is for someone to pick them up every day after work. And someone who has a job of their own somehow has a schedule that can fit you in. Because every time you squirt the windshield washer, it squirts out by magic. Someone who fills up your gas tank all the time. Someone who washes and cleans out your car every time. Someone who makes you coffee in the morning every time. Someone who cooks your dinner every time. Someone who washes your clothes every time. Someone who folds your clothes every time. But sometimes we stop recognizing the effort behind it. People stop appreciating the consistency. They stop realizing how rare it actually is. Because not everyone is capable of giving quiet love. Not everyone has the patience. Not everyone has the steadiness. Not everyone has the emotional maturity to keep showing up without constant excitement or recognition. And that's why the people who give quiet love often go unnoticed while they're still there. Until something changes, until the quiet presence disappears, until the phone stops being answered, until the check-ins stop happening, until consistency that once felt ordinary suddenly becomes something that's missing. And when that happens, people sometimes look back and realize something they didn't see before. That quiet love was never ordinary at all. It was just rare, and it was care. Now, this brings us to something that many people experience at some point in their lives, but very few people talk about honestly. It's the moment when someone stops trying. Not dramatically, not with a big speech, not with a fight or a scene or some explosive ending. Drop the mic. It's quieter than that. It's the moment when a person who has been showing up, answering the phone, answering the text, whatever, making time, messaging back, being present, simply stop doing those things the way they used to. And from the outside, it looks confusing because the other person might always ask themselves, what happened? Why did they suddenly change? But the truth is, usually it wasn't sudden at all. It was something building up slowly over time. One disappointment after it all, after another. And the reason people reach that point is not because they stopped caring. That's the part people often misunderstand. They didn't stop caring. They stopped because caring started to actually hurt. They knew nothing was coming on the back end. There's a certain kind of pain that shows up when someone keeps investing effort into a relationship or another person, but begins to feel like that effort is not valued. They start feeling disrespected. It's not always obvious at first. It might begin with a small moment, a call that doesn't get returned. Maybe your presence is required and you figure you can go and do something else while they do twiddle their thumbs because they were hoping to spend time with you. So you cancel plans or you don't make plans at all. Messages that sit unanswered longer and longer. Promises that slowly stop being kept. Each moment by itself might not actually be a big deal. But when the moments start stacking up on top of each other, something inside the person who is trying begins to shift. They start asking themselves quiet questions. Am I the only one who cares this much? Am I the only one making space? Am I the only one putting effort into this? And when those questions don't get answered in some sort of a meaningful way, the emotional weight begins to build. Because people can handle difficulty. People can handle problems. People can handle conflict. But what most people struggle with is feeling invisible. Feeling like their effort is expected but not appreciated. Feeling like they're showing up for someone who slowly stops showing up for them. And eventually comes the point where something inside of them reaches a limit. It's not anger or bitterness, it's just exhaustion. They begin realizing something different, that being taken for granted hurts more than being alone. That realization is powerful, because once someone reaches that point, their behavior begins to change. The person who used to answer the phone every time begins letting the phone ring a little longer. They start letting the text sit a little longer. The person who always made time begins to protect their time. The person who constantly shows up begins to just staying where they are. And to the other person in the relationship, this can feel shocking because suddenly something that felt permanent is no longer there. Suddenly the person who always is available seems distant. Suddenly the warmth that once existed feels colder. That's the moment people finally notice the absence. That's the day when silence becomes noticeable. That's the day when someone realizes something important has changed. And then the realization arrives. People often begin seeing the past a little differently. They start remembering all the times that person showed up. The calls they answered, all the moments they made space, all the ways they quietly held the relationship together. And suddenly something becomes clear that wasn't obvious before. Availability was love. reliability was effort. Presence and presence were actual gifts. Not something automatic, not something guaranteed, a gift. And like many gifts in life, its value sometimes only becomes clear after it's gone. I saw something today. It was in a Facebook post? And it said, how many of you remember the car that you sold, gave away, maybe even sent to the wreckers that you wish you didn't, and you think about it every now and then in a very, very happy and valuable way. But at the time that you got rid of it, you look past it like it was nothing. That happens with cars. What about people? It's like the song by Brian McKnight, Do I Ever Cross Your Mind? You should play that sometime. Think about what I'm saying. And now that brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths people eventually learn about relationships. And the reason is uncomfortable. The reason it is uncomfortable is because it goes against what most of us are taught to admire. We're taught to admire greatness. We're taught to admire impressive, I should say, not expressive, impressive. I didn't even say that. We're taught to admire impressive people. That exceptional person. The person who stands out from everyone else. It's a head foot taller than everybody else. But when it comes to building a life with someone, the qualities that keep relationships alive are often much quieter and simpler than the qualities of first attraction. Because the person who can fly you around the world may not be the person who stays when life gets heavy. See, that person, they seem larger than life, but they may not have the patience for ordinary life. In ordinary life, this is no ordinary life. No ordinary life. Not ordinary love. Who knows? An ordinary life is where most relationships actually live day by day. The person who looks ordinary at first glance might be the one capable of building that life someday. Steady. And steady is underrated. People don't talk about steadiness the way they talk about excitement and passion and chemistry. But steadiness is one of the most valuable qualities of a person that they can bring to a relationship. Steady means something very simple. It means they're there. They got you. They're there when you wake up in the morning. They're there when the day's been long. They're there when things go wrong. They're there when life becomes stressful. They're there when something breaks. When something falls apart, when something doesn't go the way they would, or way you would have hoped. Steady people don't disappear when life gets difficult. They don't vanish when excitement fades. They don't suddenly lose interest when relationships move out of the honeymoon stage and into real life. They stay. And staying is more powerful than most people realize most times. Because long-term relationships are not built on heroic moments. They're not built on grand gestures or dramatic scenes or exciting stories. Those moments can be meaningful, don't get me wrong, but they're not what holds two people together. There's a lot of experiences that we have that are amazing, but they're like one-offs. I remember when I did this with this person. I remember when I did that with that person. I remember when I went here with that person. And it's not generally the same person. Exactly. But you know who cooks your food every day. You know who opens your car door every day. You know who ties your tie or fixes your dress or pulls up your slip, I don't know, adjusts your bra strap, I don't know. You know that person. You know who does it all the time. Thousands of ordinary moments, two people waking up on a regular Tuesday, two people navigating stress from work, two people figuring out how to handle disagreements without destroying the relationship, two people supporting each other through illness, disappointment, financial pressures, family problems, and all the things that life throws at people over time, day by day. Those are the moments where relationships either survive or fall apart. And those moments require a certain kind of person. Not necessarily the most impressive person, not necessarily the most exciting person, but a person who has the patience to remain present. The person who understands the relationships are not sustained by constant excitement. They're sustained by commitment. They're sustained by reliability. They're sustained by quiet decision to keep showing up for another person even when nothing dramatic or amazing is happening. And when you start looking at relationships through that lens, something interesting becomes clear. The person who's looking or who looked ordinary at first might actually possess the qualities that matter the most. The ability to listen, the ability to be patient, the ability to stay calm when things get difficult, the ability to carry emotional weight without running away, the ability to show up consistently over long periods of time. Those qualities don't always stand out in the beginning. How could they? But they become incredibly valuable over time because relationships are not about finding someone who can perform greatness every once in a while. They're about finding someone who can walk beside you for years, someone who can stand you, someone who understands that life is not always exciting, someone who understands that real connection is built through consistency, someone who understands that the most meaningful kind of love is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like two people simply choosing each other again and again through the ordinary days of life. And those ordinary days stack together over time because foundation of something extraordinary is there. You see, maybe the real question isn't, do you want Superman? Maybe the real question is, do you recognize Clark Kent? Because Clark Kent is the one who answers the phone. Clark Kent is the one who shows up at the same time every day. Clark Kent is the one who chooses you repeatedly every single day. And the tragedy is, most people don't realize how rare that kind of love is until it stops. So if someone in your life is still showing up, still choosing you, still making space for you, don't wait until they're gone to recognize their value. Care back, love back, call back while you still can, because people who show up like that are rarer than superheroes. So maybe the real question is, do you want a Superman, as I said before? Maybe the real question is, do you recognize Clark Kent? You see, Superman can do a lot. Superman can rescue you, can sweep you up. Superman can make you feel like you're part of something big. But Clark Kent is the one who lives beside you. Clark Kent is the one who deals with real life with you, regular Tuesday, as I said before. When you're tired, when you're irritated, when the bills are due, when the family is on your nerves, when you're worried about health, when you're overwhelmed, when you don't feel confident, when you feel like life is not romantic at all. That's where love shows up. And all those amazingly regular moments. No heroics, no heroics. And I think a lot of people miss that. Not always out of cruelty or familiarity. Jeez. As I've been saying and hammering it home, as you can tell. You see, the worst part can be in the moment, it doesn't feel like anything is wrong. It just feels normal until it isn't. Until one day the person who always answers doesn't. Still, they stop checking in, as I said before. The person who always makes space stops making space. Not because they stop caring, but because everything starts hurting. Because Clark Kent is the one answering the phone. He's the one checking in. And you know, if someone like that is there to listen, and listen always, don't wait until silence teaches you what that presence is worth. Because people who show up like that without spotlight on them, without a performance, without drama, they're very rare. Rarer than superheroes, surprisingly. And if you keep chasing Superman while ignoring Clark Kent, you might lose Clark, really. And you might end up with a Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is smart, cunning, powerful. He can take you on trips. He can buy you things. He can give you things. He can show out and show people that he is just as spectacular as a Superman. Things can go left with that kind of a character as well, while doing all those wonderful things. And it might turn out that you might get Superman and he might turn into Lex Luthor. Just think about it for a while. Anyways, the point is, take care of those who are willing to take care of you. And if you notice red flags, they just might be red flags. Not the little ones that you accuse the Clark Kents of the world for having, but those same things that will excite you can also make you cry. Anyhow, until next time, guys, this is MCM signing off. This is a long one, and I know that it was quite redundant at certain parts, but I'm trying to hammer home something. I just want you to remember that those who are present in your life doing regularly ordinary things may have a lot more value than you'll think. And usually if you talk to someone older than you, maybe by many years, they could tell you about somebody they used to know, that used to care, that showed up more brighter than anyone that they even know at present, and they took that one for granted. Don't let that be you. Take care of yourself, y'all.
Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 ducks. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.
Ooh, yeah. Listen. It's getting late and I'm still wide awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the space you take. One day you're here, next day you're gone, and I'm just trying to understand where we went wrong. You only love me in the middle of the night. Then you fade away with the morning light. I need to know, is this for real? Tell me how you truly feel. Oh, yeah. I give my all, you give me half your heart. You say the words, but we just stay so far apart. These mixed signals are tearing me down, lost in the silence when you're not around. Tell me how you feel. How you really feel. Is any of this real? Just tell me, yeah. Tell me, baby. Oh. You only love me in the middle of the night. Then you fade away with the morning light. I need to know, is this for real? Tell me how you truly feel. Oh.